This is my favorite topic in Algebra 2. I've been so excited about this all year. This is parabolas. I love parabolas. I've actually been technically teaching parabolas since I was in Algebra 2, because back when I was in Algebra 2, Mrs. Cornejo was like, Camille, you're going to teach this lesson. And so I had to learn it on my own and teach the lesson to the whole class. So anyway, I have much experience with teaching parabolas. So a parabola is something in the form of y equals x squared. Now what I've done here is I've said, okay, I'm going to map out the x and the y coordinates. So if I plug in -3 in for x and I square it, I get 9, positive 9. If I plug in -2, I get 4 when I square it. If I plug in -1, I get 1 when I square it. If I plug in 0, I get 0. Sorry, that should say 0. And then if I plug in 1, I get 1. If I plug in 2, I get 4. If I plug in 3, I get 9. Okay. So we're going to graph each of these points on a coordinate plane. So the first thing I would do is plot -3, 9. So I go 3 to the left and then 9. And then I plot my other points, right, just following my graph, except that it should be 0, 0. And then I get this nice curved shape, which I'm going to call a parabola. It's kind of like a big bowl, right, that kind of opens outwards. Okay, the little point here is called the vertex. This is the vertex 0, 0, right? Because if I plugged in 0 for x, I got 0 for y. And what I'm going to use is kind of like the center of the circle, right? I'm going to use h, comma, k to describe the vertex, okay? Just like I used h, comma, k to describe the center. Now, this is a standard curve. I can also call this the parent function if I'm talking about a function and f of x is equal to x squared, okay? So the basic parabola is y equals x squared. And then we're going to have all kinds of things that can happen to the parabola that look a little bit different. So suppose that I have like something multiplied with my x squared. So let's say I have y equals ax squared. Now, if a is positive, then the parabola is going to open upward. And if a is negative, the parabola is going to open downwards, right? And this is pretty straightforward. You should be able to remember this. If you have a negative number in front of your x squared term, right, it's going to open downwards rather than upwards. Okay, so then let's suppose that I have an equation, which is going to be what I call my standard equation for the parabola. So it's going to look like this. I'm going to have y minus k is equal to a times x minus h squared. It looks very similar to the formula for a circle, right, where I have h and k with the x's and y's. So hk is going to be the vertex. And A is going to determine how wide or narrow the parabola is and also which way it faces, right? Does it point up? Does it point down? Is it negative or positive, right? So these are the two things that I'm going to consider with a parabola. Let's suppose that I have a certain parabola that has a standard equation of y minus 2 is equal to x plus 3 squared. So first of all, my vertex is going to be -3, right? I always flip what I see because it's x minus h, so it's x minus 3, really. So the vertex is going to be -3 and then +2, right? That's my k, okay? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to graph this parabola by going over 1 and then up 1. And then I'm going to go over the 2 from the vertex and up by 4. Okay, and then I would go over 3 and up by 9. Do you notice a pattern? I'm squaring how much I go over. I'm squaring it each time to figure out how much I go up. So if I go over 1, I go up 1. If I go over 2, I go up by 4. If I go over 3, I go up by 9, right? So over 4 would be up by 16. So hopefully that makes sense. And this was because my a was actually equal to 1. So this is very similar shape to the standard parabola. It's just shifted. So I'm going to graph this other parabola that has a vertex of -1, -6. Notice that I flipped the signs each time. But this time, I'm not going to go over 1, up 1. I'm going to go over 1, and I'm going to go up by 2 because I'm going up by a. Okay, and the second time I'm going to go over 2 and then go up by 4 times a, which would be up by 8 because it's 4 times 2. Okay, so I graph my parabola, and it looks like this, and I connect the dots. Okay. This parabola, because it was an a of 2, this parabola kind of gets like stretched upwards. It's like the bigger the a value is, the more I'm going to like stretch the parabola upwards. So it's actually going to get skinnier and skinnier because I'm pulling it apart, like I'm pulling it up and down. Okay, whereas a smaller a, like one that's less than 1, it's kind of like I take my hands and I squish it together. Okay, and if I squish it together, then it would become very wide and open, right? Because the two sides would kind of go and open up. So here we have what the a value is going to do and how it's going to change. Now the last thing is that we notice that parabolas are the same on either side, right? They have a line of symmetry, and the line of symmetry for this first one is going to be x is equal to -1. The second line of symmetry is x is equal to -3. Okay, but really generally my axis of symmetry is always going to be x minus h. Okay, that's going to be the axis of symmetry for pretty much any parabola is x equals h. Sorry, not minus h. X equals h is the axis of symmetry. I'm very sorry, this whole video is very tilted. Please forgive me. Hopefully your OCD isn't going crazy. Okay, so we have y minus 2 is equal to -1/2 x squared. So now we finally have a negative, okay? So we're going to figure out what we're going to do with that negative a value. So I know that the vertex h comma k is going to be 0, 2, and my a is equal to -1/2, right? So right there I've written a equals 1/2. I need to make sure that I have the correct sign with a. It should be -1/2. And then my axis of symmetry is going to be x is equal to 0, right? Because it's always x is equal to h. Okay, so I've drawn my vertex. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over 1. Now, usually I go up by a, so I'll go up by 1/2. But in this case, since it's a negative a, I'm going to go down by 1/2. So I go over 1, down by 1/2, or down by a, right? And then over 2 from the vertex, and then down by 4 times a, which would be 4 times 1/2. So I'd go down by 2. Okay, so this is kind of a... this isn't the way that a book would teach it, right? But I kind of like this way of doing it where I'm like, okay, I draw my vertex and that's all I need, and then I just go over 1. I always go over 1 from the vertex, then I go up by a, and then I start back at the vertex, I go over 2, and I go up by 4 times a. All right, let's suppose I want to find an equation for a parabola, and the vertex is 4, 5, and it contains the point 5,3, which means the point 5,3 is on the parabola. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write the standard equation, just plug in h and k, that's easy. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 5 and 3 in for x and y. When I do that, I get -2 is equal to a times 1 squared, which is just 1, and then a is going to be equal to -2. So the standard form for this parabola is just y minus 5 is equal to -2 times x minus 4 squared. I hope you enjoy your homework, and I hope you also have a great day.